A classic car does not just move, it talks back. The thin steering wheel trembles, the engine shakes through the seat, fuel hangs in the air, and every gear change clicks like machinery at work. A modern car is faster, safer, quieter, and easier, yet somehow it can feel less memorable. The reason is not nostalgia, it is engineering. Before computers became co-drivers, most of the car was a chain of physical connections. Press the accelerator, and a cable pulled open a throttle plate. Turn the wheel, and hydraulic pressure helped move a steering rack that still fed load back into your hands. Move the gear lever, and rods, forks, and synchros had to line up before the next gear would accept you. The engine was not constantly being corrected by layers of software. In many classics, a carburetor mixed fuel by airflow and pressure. Later systems used simple fuel injection, but they still left more of the engine's behavior exposed. Cold starts, idle speed, throttle response, and even the smell of unburned fuel were part of the operating character, not problems hidden behind calibration. Every control had a small demand attached to it. The clutch had a bite point you learned by feel. The brake pedal needed real pressure before the car slowed with confidence. The steering became heavier as the front tires loaded up. A clean gear change depended on timing, engine speed, and the movement of your hand. Modern cars still had mechanical parts, but computers now stand between the driver and many of the reactions. Electronic throttles smooth pedal movement. Electric power steering filters kickback. Automatic gearboxes predict the best shift. Stability control, traction control, emissions systems, and comfort tuning all adjust the car before the driver feels the raw result. That made cars easier to live with and far more capable. But when effort disappeared, some of the conversation disappeared with it. A classic car rarely begins the journey perfectly. On a cold morning, the idle may hunt up and down while the engine warms. The choke might need a careful hand. The first few minutes can feel slightly rough, as if the whole machine is clearing its throat before it agrees to work properly. Then there are the sounds that modern engineering tries to erase. A loose trim piece may buzz at a certain speed. The dashboard may creak over bumps. The gearbox may whine in one ratio more than the others. None of these details improve performance, but they remind you that the car is made from separate parts, each reacting to the road in its own way. Now, the smells are part of it too. Warm oil, hot metal, old leather, a trace of fuel after startup. These are not luxury features. They are byproducts of heat, friction, and age. But they give the car a physical presence that a silent, sealed cabin often removes. Imperfection also changes how you drive. You learn that the engine prefers a certain rev range. You discover that the brakes feel better after the first firm stop. You know which door needs a stronger pull, which window switch hesitates, which gear change rewards patience. Over time, those flaws become identifiers. They turn one car from a model into a specific machine with habits. A modern car is designed to disappear into convenience. A classic keeps interrupting you with evidence that it is awake. In many classic cars, speed arrived long before the speedometer showed a big number. A family sedan from the 1960s might have narrow tires, soft suspension, modest brakes, and a body that flexed slightly over rough pavement. At 40 or 50 miles per hour, it could already feel busy. That is because the car had fewer layers between the driver and the forces acting on it. The steering wheel did not just change direction. It trembled with surface changes, went light over crests, and loaded up as the front tires worked through a bend. You could feel grip being spent. The body moved more, too. A quick lane change brought a noticeable lean. A corner taken with enthusiasm made the outside suspension compress and the cabin tilt. The motion was not always precise, but it told you where the weight had gone, and it made every input matter. Then came the sound. Wind pushed around thin pillars and simple seals. Tires hummed and scrubbed as they approached their limit. The engine often sat at higher revs because gearing was shorter and sound insulation was lighter. Even ordinary acceleration could sound like effort. Brakes added another layer of attention. They were often weaker, less consistent, and easier to overheat. You learned to plan your stops, not because the car was dramatic, but because the margin was smaller. A modern performance car can travel at illegal speeds while feeling calm, flat, and sealed from consequence. Its tires are wider, its structure is stiffer, its brakes are stronger, and its computers smooth out mistakes before they become moments. That is why the fastest car is not always the most thrilling. The more memorable machine is often the one that makes you feel speed while there is still room to enjoy it, and makes you part of the action before the numbers become dangerous. Modern cars did not become quieter, smoother, and more isolated by accident. They became that way because the world asked them to. Crash standards demanded stronger structures, airbags, crumple zones, stability control, anti-lock brakes, and stronger roof pillars. Emissions rules forced cleaner combustion, catalytic converters, oxygen sensors, exhaust gas recirculation, and eventually complex engine management. Fuel economy targets pushed taller gearing, smaller engines, turbocharging, hybrid systems, and transmissions with more ratios than many older cars had cylinders. These changes saved lives, reduced pollution, and made cars last longer with less maintenance. A modern engine can start in freezing weather, idle smoothly in traffic, pass an emissions test, and run for hundreds of thousands of miles with basic servicing. That is not soullessness. That is engineering success. Customer expectations changed at the same time. Buyers wanted cabins that stayed quiet at highway speed, air conditioning that worked in August traffic, steering that did not require effort in a parking lot, brakes that felt the same every morning, and suspensions that could absorb broken pavement without shaking the dashboard apart. Manufacturers listened. They softened controls, filtered vibration, reduced wind noise, isolated engine mounts, added sound deadening, and replaced mechanical linkages with electronic systems. Throttle cables became sensors, hydraulic steering became electric assistance, gauge needles became screens, buttons became menus. For most people, this was progress in the most practical sense. A car became less of a machine to manage and more of a tool to get through the day. It could sit in traffic, protect a family, connect to a phone, guide a route, correct a skid, and make a long commute feel less tiring. The trade was not that modern cars became worse. The trade was that they became less demanding. Fewer noises needed interpretation. Fewer vibrations carried meaning. Fewer controls required judgment. The car handled more of the work, and the driver had fewer reasons to notice what was happening underneath. That is the emotional cost of progress. The safer, cleaner, easier car often asks less from the person driving it, and when a machine asks less from you, it can be harder to feel close to it. Classic cars feel alive because they still need your hands, ears, and judgment. Their flaws become signals, and their feedback becomes a conversation. Thanks for watching. Comment with the car that felt most alive to you, and subscribe for more automotive stories.